Welcome, everyone. Really glad that you're here joining us today. My name is Kevin, and I'm here with my colleague Erica. We're both from the Industrial IoT team, and we have a extremely special guest here from Toyota today. Um, we've had some incredible conversations with them along the way, but today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to make this conversation live. So, Srini, welcome. We really appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you. Hey everyone, this is Srini Kolsu, a principal network architect from Toyota, working primarily on enterprise and OT network. Much of my work is centered around connecting plant factory floor systems to the enterprise platforms to support Industry 4.0 transformation and manufacturing digitization.
Karen, it's great to be here at the studio here with you. And Srini, it's a pleasure to have you here. I really enjoy working with you and your team. You always bring excellent insight and challenges to us. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. What is happening in Toyota?
Yeah, it's a lot of innovation. It's really a great place to be in right now at Toyota. There's a lot of innovation happening, and our goal is to deliver the best quality products for Toyota. So, yeah, there's lots and lots of innovation.
So before we get started in the conversation, let's set the stage, right? So the manufacturing world is going through a lot right now, right? So if we think about the state of the industrial AI report that we actually did, we actually polled 1,000 customers across the board. And from that, I think we can derive four major macro shifts in the industry. So Eric, I'm going to ask you along the way to provide some examples, but the first one is the AI pushing into the plant floor. So as you see that in your day-to-day travels with customer, what are some of the big use cases for AI on the plant floor?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest one is the machine vision. There is an explosion of camera use cases out there for quality control and for process control. So that's driving a lot of the AI right now. We also see AGV cases and software-defined automation.
Yeah. And in that AI use case, I mean, we start talking about the network as being a critical component of this, and much like the nervous system, if you will. And that research told us that over half of the customers are looking at providing AI at scale in some form or fashion. So let's go on to the second bucket, if you will. So mobility. It's kind of changing how we look at everything and how we look at what connects. So what are some of those components on the shop floor that connect via wireless?
So I think there is a big shift towards AGVs because the floor in the manufacturing floor is changing. We are moving towards flexible floor plans instead of fixed assembly lines.
Yeah. And I think when you do that, what's really important to us is to make sure that we have lossless connectivity. So you can't stand to drop a connection, lose a packet or whatever in an AGV environment for the risk of actually stalling that entire environment. So that really changes the perspective on the importance of connectivity. So the third one I would say is the IT OT convergence. And I'm going to replace convergence with collaboration. Because really what it is, it's about coming together and understanding each other's environment as well as the operating use cases that we go under. So that's really putting some new requirements on the network and the advent of pulling in AI into that conversation. And then the one finally, cybersecurity. That is front and center in the news today. We can't get away from it. Everybody has to address it and deal with it. Doesn't matter where you are in this journey of industry. We all have to look at cybersecurity.
And I will say it's getting even more prevalent today that we are connecting more assets and we need flows to the cloud for digital twins, for example. So it's more important today than ever.
Yep, and then you really can't advance in the if you think about the industry evolution in order to get AI, you can't have those dark pools of data. You can't have those spots of unconnected data. So we really have to think about the infrastructure and how we connect that entire environment to drive this forward. So having said that, Srini, so when you hear these four that we've been talking about here, does that map to what you're seeing within Toyota, and what are you feeling the most pressure from?
Yeah, those four absolutely map to what we are seeing on the plant floor. And I had say they are not independent forces anymore. They are converging in very real ways on the plant floor. AI is the catalyst. As you start pushing AI and advanced analytics closer to the machines, either vision systems, predictive maintenance, or the quality inspection, you immediately stress the network in a ways that we didn't 2 to 3 years ago. And the mobility is an accelerant. So mobility is one of those shifts. It looks incremental on the surface, but it is actually changing the physical, operational, and the digital model of the plant floor all at once. And we see more and more AGVs, AMRs, handhelds, wearables, mobile robots are being added to the plant floor. The connectivity is no longer fixed or predictable. The network has to be the resilient and adaptive, always on, because manufacturing doesn't pause when the connectivity blips. That's where the IT-OT convergence really comes up as a pressure. Historically, OT networks are isolated, purpose-built, and stable. The IT networks are designed to scale and change. Now we're being asked to bring these two worlds together without compromising the safety, uptime, and the operational ownership. That's a non-trivial shift, not just technically, but organizationally. And, and the cybersecurity cuts across all of it. It's no more a future concern or a compliance exercise. It's a constraint in the design from the day one. Every new connection, every new use case expands the attack surface, especially in manufacturing where availability is everything. If I had to pick one thing where the most pressure is, I would say it's in balancing the speed and stability. The business wants the new digital capabilities to be deployed in a faster pace, but the manufacturing demands zero disruption. As our job as a network architects is to create an infrastructure that allows innovation without introducing the risk.
So I'm going to kind of respond back to what you said here. So really what I heard, and just please validate what what I heard, but you basically said the importance of the network is being the backbone for uptime, making sure the factory is running clearly, right? You also talked about, making sure that visibility is absolutely critical when we start talking about the cybersecurity journey. And you also talked about connectivity. So would you agree that, in our evolution into AI, that connectivity and getting all your data connected to train models and such is important?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. Because when I say this OT network is the foundation for a manufacturing excellence, right? They enable the safe, stable production while supporting the advancement of the digitization.
So Srini, let's get down to specifics here. So when we talk about these issues and how we solve them, so what was actually breaking down on your side? So paint the picture for us so we can get some ideas of how this can be resolved.
Nothing was outright failing, but the gap showed up clearly when we started the transformation journey. As we continued to advance our Industry 4.0 transformation, IT and OT integrations have become both a critical enabler and a key challenge.
This IT OT collab that you mentioned is really a hot topic, and it's probably the most difficult thing for us to solve. Aside from technology, we're starting to introduce people and processes into this whole world. So we see this all the time. Groups at odds with each other, trying to understand what's important. Obviously, IT has different importance in things in mind, or different goals than OT. So I think that this is really going to help us when we start coming together as this process and start to tackle some of these issues.
And something I want to say there is we have these teams. We have IT team, we have OT team, we have cybersecurity team, and they have different priorities. Everyone understands that we need to work together now. But yet 43% of the respondents on the industrial AI report say they work with little to none collaboration today.
Yeah, that's alarming actually. But in order for us to get to what we consider industry maturity and going into this AI world, that has to come together. It's a critical point. So sorry, I'll let you go back and talk about your next.
Yeah, I would like to comment on the same thing, right? So at the end of the day, the transformation is not about IT or OT doing things independently. It's about both teams coming together for a shared outcome. Because as you know, the OT, they're really they have the expertise on the production, and then the IT can contribute on the technology advancements. So the collaboration is the key for any successful transformation in terms of the scale and the sustainment.
So Srini, I think you have mentioned in the past you also have challenges with private networks on the factory floor. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so like I said, I would like to cover the two challenges that we saw, right? One of the primary challenges is the ownership. Uh, in IT environment, the response in the OT environments, I'm sorry, the responsibility is often shared across multiple teams. So while the shared ownership is necessary, but it can cause delays in terms of the alignment when we are talking about the OT use cases and architecture. Another challenge is like you mentioned about the private OT networks, the prevalence of OT networks. Closely related is the reuse of private overlapping IP address space on the OT networks. Private IP reuse was common because these are built in an isolated environment, and it is simple, right? OEMs can and bring and they build the similar systems with the same IP space, but it becomes a significant challenge when you integrate them with the IT networks. So the overlapping IP space actually increases the architectural complexity.
I was very impressed when I visited the Toyota plant or the amount of AGVs you have on the factory floor, and they are just going seamless, different size of AGVs, carrying materials, and carrying the car during the final assembly. Can you tell us how was the process for you to implement this in this such a seamless way?
Yeah, so on the wireless side, the before picture was very clear as the mobility scaled. We started with what looked like a coverage problem, but it turned out to be a much deeper issue architecturally. Over the time, the plant floor got denser, more AGVs, more robots, more handhelds, more movement. Wi-Fi that was originally defined as a best effort connectivity was suddenly supporting the production grade applications. AGVs and mobile robot don't tolerate the mostly good connectivity. A brief roaming interruption or an interference can stop a robot that can stop the production line. So the wireless is no longer a best effort. It's now directly tied to the uptime.
So interestingly enough, when we talk about these private OT networks, I heard this the other day, and I heard a customer come back and say, "This whole AI adventure, I don't know if I've got enough data to train models, right?" So I would say that they had private networks and gaps that they probably have enough data. It's just that they don't have access to the data. So connecting and bridging and providing the appropriate security of those networks and bringing them online, and as you mentioned, Srini, doing that in a safe way, is actually critical in order to make this leap into the AI world. So, Eric, I'm going to pivot over to you for a second. So, you talk to manufacturing customers globally, and you hear these same things a lot. So, what do you think about what Srini has shared and what his experiences have been at Toyota? What's your reaction to all that?
This really resonates with me. We see it from the customers, but this is also a result that we saw from the industrial AI report, where it shows that the customers really think the network is the maker or breaker of the industrial AI projects. Another pillar that is very important for them is cybersecurity, as you mentioned previously, and this IT and OT convergence that Srini is talking about. So we need the three things. We need reliable connectivity, we need cybersecurity, and we need this collaboration. And since this is so common for our customers, we work really hard in Cisco to provide guidance for them. So I want to introduce for everyone listening the concept of Cisco Validated Designs, or CVDs. They are pre-validated blueprints for your architecture that you can use to de-risk the deployment. So those CVDs are deployed in the field easier because they have been already tested, and we have already figured out what works, what doesn't, and how the things connect together.
Yeah, I absolutely, having personal experience with CVDs, they're fantastic because it's almost that how-to guide of how to actually implement the technology in a proven and validated way. Because as a customer, you would think about these things and saying, this is overwhelming, right? How do I bring this together in a successful way? But it is really reassuring to know that we have the labs and the ability to test those. So let's solidify this whole concept here a little bit. So Srini has actually deployed this, right? So we're taking what's in our catalog, in our CVDs, and he's actually putting this to real practice. So let's take a look at now what this actually looks like in practice. So Erica, why don't you make some comments on that?
Yeah, so Srini, when you and I started working together, you brought a lot of interesting challenges. One was this private IP space we have been talking about. And we proposed to you like the CVD way of solving this with a layer to NAT address translation. How is that working for you?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I know we talked about this challenge for quite some time, right? So yeah, I personally go through the CVDs, right? And then I use them to design our networks. One of the challenges that I mentioned about the IT/OT integration is the use of overlapping IP address space. The OEMs intentionally reuse the same IP address space across identical machines and the skids. Those addresses cannot be changed without risking the recertification or the downtime. That's where the L2 NAT on Cisco IE 9300s and 3400s are helping the customers. In our case, it allowed us to integrate these machines into the broader plant and the enterprise network without readdressing or redesigning the machines. It solves the real problems around the stability, vendor constraints, and the segmentation, and on top of it, without compromising the OT stability.
Thanks, Srini. And what about the wireless? I'm very impressed about your wireless deployment. So how did the CVD in industrial wireless help you provide wireless connectivity for these AGVs that are going in the plant floor?
Yeah, sure. So I think, Erica, so our strategy is to have a multi wireless access technology for different use cases across manufacturing plants and the part centers. So the industry applications, use cases, and the business drivers determines the technology selections. As you know, one of the use cases a specific AGV AMR solution that required a safety rated industrial wireless connectivity, and their requirement was really strict, right? So, the latency requirement is under 10 milliseconds, high reliability, fiber like wireless anywhere, and seamless roaming. So when we heard these requirements, we know right then, okay, the traditional wireless network may not be the right solution for it. That's when we discussed with your team, and you introduce us to a Cisco ultra reliable wireless backhaul technology with a with an early engagement between the IT, OEMs, OT, and integrators. We were able to deliver this solution using in the Cisco ultra reliable wireless just in time for the business. That was a great success story.
So you mentioned you're talking about Curb and the AGVs. So let's talk into your experience a little bit about what happens when you do not meet those thresholds. You either drop connections or you go outside of latency. What happens to your AGV network? Because this is a really important point.
Yeah, so like I said, those requirements are very strict. So all these AGVs, right, they carry the parts to different manufacturing lines. So Toyota follows is just in time method, right? So if there's even a small interference, if you put these AGVs on a traditional wireless network, like I said, the traditional wireless network was designed as a best effort, and if they cannot sustain even a small interference or a roaming loss, right, the AGV will stop and it can stop the production line. So it creates a huge impact. That's why having the seamless, stable, ultra reliable wireless is the key for this AGV MR solution.
So think about that. Think about if you have a blip in the wireless network, all the AGVs stop and have to have manual intervention. That's a huge impact to production.
And it's a big shift today because, as I said at the beginning, for most of our customers, wireless is becoming part of the critical process. It's not an option anymore for just Wi-Fi and for tablets and devices. It's part of the production process. So we need really reliable networks.
So let's fast forward to today. So what is actually different now that we've had these discussions? We've leveraged the CVDs. Srini, what can your teams do now that they couldn't do before?
Yeah, I can highlight the 5 things actually. One is on the IT/OT collaboration. It enabled the seamless integration of the IT and OT environments, accelerating the manufacturing digitization. Not only that, right? It's supporting an additional use cases such as asset remote monitoring and the management. And the second one I want to talk about is the speed of delivery. You know, leveraging the Cisco Catalyst Center plug and play feature, we were able to rapidly deploy 30 to 50 switches in a day without any local support or a console access. That's a great achievement. In the past, if we had to do this, so we need to engage the local site support and they will have to console in, or we had to pre-build the configurations, right? But now with the standardized templates on the Catalyst Center, using the plug and play, we were just onboarding the switches.
So now you can get done with the configurations in your allotted change window without running over.
Yep, that's true. Um, and the third thing I want to talk about is the OT asset visibility. Like I said, right, these OT assets, they're very critical. So in the past, even our maintenance teams, they do not have a lot of telemetry around these assets, right? How they behave on the network, what is the throughput, what are the errors, and all that. Now, with the integration of these networks with the Catalyst Center, they are able to look at the client health, the telemetry, how they are behaving, and all that. That's actually a big win for our production teams.
Yeah, I heard a stat the other day that about 80% of the customer base out there aren't confident in the visibility asset and the databases that they have. So visibility is absolutely critical, and it's always kind of that first starting point when you think about cybersecurity.
I couldn't agree more. So the next two things that I would like to talk about is the empowering the frontline workers. I think I mentioned is one of the challenge when we talked about the IT/OT integration is the ownership, right? So the biggest challenge is, hey, what happens in the middle of the night if something goes down? So it takes time to engage the centralized IT support, and it can take time, and that time delay can cause a significant business impact. So that's where, so we enable our frontline teams with to act as the first line of defenders by providing the secure role-based access to the OT networks. Now they can do their daily tasks without engaging the IT team, and if there is an issue, they can troubleshoot their own. And obviously, they will escalate to us if they need a high-level support.
So Srini, and I know you are doing role-based access control today, but we introduced recently the site-based and role-based access control from Catalyst Center. We are excited for you to try this feature, and we have guidance for that also as part of the CVDs. So you understand how to set up the Catalyst Center deployment and hierarchy to make use of this and empower even more your OT.
I'm really excited. Actually, we are waiting on this role-based and the site-based architecture, because that's a really key feature to empower our frontline team, right? We can give them the right level of access to those teams without risking the operational issues.
So I'm hearing a couple of different concepts here. Number one, it worked, which is awesome, right? But the other thing that I'm hearing, and I don't know if you picked up on it, but how he's describing this is that the team now operates at a different level of confidence than they did before. So that's a huge, huge item. And he can't put a number to it really. So it's really hard to do that, but it is vital importance to the overall production operation of this. So this is amazing to hear you talk about this, Srini.
And this actually is part of what we do this job as the creator of Cisco Alliated Designs. I'm really proud to empower the customers on this journey. And I really want to tell everyone out there that is listening to this that if you have never heard of these Cisco Alliated Designs before, they are free, they are available, they are real, they are in cisco.com. So you can go and download. If anything of this resonated with you, the IT/OT friction, the demands the AI is putting in the network, or how to deploy fast without getting it wrong, just go and check the CVDs. We try to remove all the guesswork already from them so you can deploy with confidence. So Kevin, anything else you want to say today?
I would say that, we're here for you, right? So this is our job. So if you want to talk through these scenarios that we talked about today, things that might apply to your environment, please reach out to us. That's what we're here for. So we're happy to have any of those conversations at any time to kind of help you along the way. So Srini, do you have any final comments along the way around this discussion?
Yeah, I would like to comment on the CVD. Right. So yes, I agree. CVD is the place to go, and they give you lot of information. Right? It's not about the theoretical the concepts. It's about how you deploy a solution, how you in a practical way. So if anybody is if they wanted to know about this concept that we talked about, I would say I would recommend you to start with the CVDs. I really appreciate the opportunity and the collaboration. I truly enjoyed this conversation.
Yep, we did as well. So, I mean, it was amazing to kind of put some a great discussion to put some practical experience and use case against the CVDs.
Before we finish today, I want to remind everyone about the CVDs. If you haven't heard about them until today, that's very common, but they are free, they are available, and they are real. You can download in Cisco.com. So if anything of this resonated with you, the IT/OT friction, the demands the AI is putting in the network, or how to speed up deployment without introducing risk, go and check the CVDs. We will post the link on the comments.
And I'd like to add, Erica, that the state of the industrial report that we released around AI, we will share that link as well in the comments. I think there's a lot of valuable information here to gather on the state of the industry, right? So, but also if you want to reach out and talk with us through, identify how these things might apply to your environment. That's what we're here for. So please reach out. We're happy to have that conversation. So I'd like to thank everyone, including our special guest Srini, and everybody watching for joining us today. So please drop your questions in the comments, share this with someone in your team who's navigating these same challenges, and we'll see you next time.